The former Ukip leader hit out at an agreement included in the German coalition deal between Angela Merkel's Christian Democratic Union and Grand Coalition partners the Social Democratic Party (SPD). Speaking on his LBC show, Farage claimed that the agreement suggested the Germans would work on the introduction of a financial transactions tax in the European context. Farage explained why this was just another reason why the UK needed to speedily cut ties with the EU instead of having a Brexit implementation deal. He said, "On Sunday, we raised a little story about the German coalition agreement between Angela Merkel and the SPD. It was this, that written into that coalition agreement is the implementation of a financial transaction tax." LBC GETTYBrexit News. Nigel Farage explained why the UK needed to leave the EU very quickly. That tax would be put on every single trade that takes place in financial markets, which if you are buying shares and selling them a couple of years later doesn't really matter. But in many commodities markets, futures markets, money markets where the same instrument is traded many times in the day, literally you put a tax on that and you find, even though it is 0.1%, you would literally kill liquidity. It would be the biggest disaster ever to hit the City of London. I said this is very dangerous because what if during the transition period that our Prime Minister is so keen on, that they attempted to implement it and say that we had to obey, because that is kind of what Barnier is saying. If anything tells me why this transition period is a very, very bad idea. Here it is. Nigel Farage. I said that we should get out as quickly as possible. Interesting. In City AM today, Chancellor Hammond said the government is seeking a good faith assurance that a shortcut process won't be adopted to fast-track legislation which would clearly be discriminatory against us. He is seeking a good faith assurance from Mr. Verhofstadt and Mr. Juncker and Mr. Barnier. Good luck with that, Philip Hammond. And if anything tells me why this transition period is a very, very bad idea. Here it is. Philip Hammond told the European Scrutiny Committee that the government has a good idea of what legislation Brussels is likely to pass in the future. Mr. Hammond also noted that he thought it would be unlikely the UK would be presented with legislation it was unaware of during the transition period which would be discriminatory to Britain. Monday, February 5, 2018. Michel Barnier and David Davis head to Downing Street for lunch meeting over the weekend. Germany's SPD voted in favor of a coalition with Mrs. Merkel's Conservatives 5 months after an inconclusive election. Mrs. Merkel congratulated her coalition partners on a clear result after a majority of SPD members voted in favor of joining another coalition with her. She tweeted, "I congratulate the SPD on this clear result and look forward to continuing to work together for the good of our country."